Let's now look at some of my own investigation which concerns witness accounts at the 24 locations where bullets were fired. We'll go through all 24 shooting locations in the order they occurred, reporting on what is alleged to have happened, how many witnesses, what they saw, and how many people were injured or killed. At each location, I will quote media reports from the most significant witnesses and also quotes from witnesses I have spoken to personally. Location 1, Lamplugh, Derrick Bird's brother's house, 5 AM. 1 dead, 0 injured, 0 witnesses. Nobody saw nor heard a thing with this murder, and I am not aware of any evidence which places Derrick Bird at the crime scene. Location 2, Mowbray Farm, Frizzington, home of solicitor Kevin Commons, 10:13 AM. Only one witness to this murder, Susan Rooney, who was situated over 150 metres away from what happened, therefore she did not see the gunman close enough to be able to recognise him. While hanging out washing, she heard a bang and then phoned the police.
Pan round, you can see the road going up there to the farmhouse. There's no way anyone would identify what's unlikely at that distance.
Here is a summary of what she said in her phone call. She heard an air rifle shot and said a fella's got out of a car and ran up the farm Lonning and he's shooting. She explained that there were 2 men and that she was frightened one of them is wounded. She then explains that somebody in a Picasso, grey-blue in colour with taxi written on the side in yellow has left the scene. So at this point we still have nobody recognising Derrick Bird after the first 2 murders. Location 3, Duke Street, Whitehaven, 10:30 AM. 1 dead, 1 injured, 11 witnesses. Let's look at the testimony first of Barbara Tingy, who worked at the sandwich shop immediately in front of where Darren Rowcastle was murdered. In this transcript of her police telephone call, she states, "A taxi pulled up at the rank, in the taxi rank, and I dunno, it was just a rifle. He had the window down, a rifle, and he shot Darren twice. He moved on and I didn't see what happened after that." She is then asked whose taxi it is, to which she replies, "I don't know, but it was a biggish man with thinning hair. I don't know whose taxi it was." She is then asked if anyone at the scene recognises the male that has fired the shots. She replies, "I never recognised this man in the taxi. Did you, Joan?" The call ends without the police identifying the gunman. I have spoken to Barbara personally, and she told me that she did not know Derrick Bird, but knew him by sight, as he occasionally came into the sandwich shop. I suspect when she said this, she meant that after seeing his face on television, she then realised that this is the person who occasionally came into the shop. In her phone call to the police, she states, "I never recognised this man in the taxi," suggesting that she did not recognise the gunman at the time of the shooting as a man who occasionally came into her shop. After the gunman killed Darren Rowcastle, he got out of his car and shot Don Reed.
I looked up and I saw Derrick Bird approach the taxi rank, shouts to Darren, "Darren, here I want you." Derrick Bird then lifts up his shotgun and then he shot Darren in the face. Then he sort of leaned up like that, went bang again, and then as he did that, he shot his quarter panel out on his Citroen Picasso. I was shouting, "No, Derrick, why, Derrick, why?" All the time. He never spoke a word to me. He just looked at me and he just had it was just a plain look. Just turned round and I thought, get for cover, and I just dived, literally. I had no direction of which way I was going. I was just going down, and in my back I realised he'd shot me. I then got down to where Darren Rowcastle was lying, and I thought I'd apply first aid. And then when I looked at Darren's face, Darren was gone. And then I turned round and looked behind me, and there's Derrick Bird just walking towards me with the shotgun. And then somebody shouted, and then he jumped in his car and he drove off.
Another alleged witness to the Duke Street shootings was ex-military man Darren Williamson, who was probably the most prominent witness featured in Channel 4's documentary. From this interview, it seems Darren Williamson witnessed more than some of the other witnesses, but strangely, I couldn't find any mention of him as an inquest witness. According to the paperwork I have, his testimony was not featured at the inquest. This makes me ask the question, was he a genuine witness? Another fellow taxi driver who previously went on holiday with Derrick Bird and witnessed the Duke Street shootings was Richard Webster. Mr. Webster, a taxi driver of 15 years, was in his car at the rank when he heard a bang, which he mistook for a car backfiring. He then saw Mr. Reed run past his taxi before seeing Bird's taxi drive from the road at the back of the rank towards the front, where it stopped. He said, Don dived between two cars. Derrick got out of his car, had a gun in his hand. He ran from the middle of the road to the top of the rank round the pavement. Mr. Webster described Mr. Reed running like Linford Christie as he tried to escape his pursuer. He was on the floor, he said. He'd done a roll and he got up and started running as fast as I have ever seen anybody run. Staying in his car, Mr. Webster watched Bird, who he described as a nice fella, ran back to his taxi carrying a gun with black sights and a silencer on the end. He said, I saw Derrick running back towards his car in the middle of the road, so I opened my door and shouted at him. He had the gun and was eyeing Donop with his sights. I couldn't believe what he was doing. I shouted out, Birdie, what the hell are you doing? He was wide-eyed, just wide and starey, and he was smiling at me.
When people were wrestling Sirhan to the ground, he was described as being completely calm and tranquil and even having a slight smile on his face.
And he was smiling at me. He just stopped what he was doing, looked at me, dropped his gun, looked at me again, got in his taxi and drove away. So, very interesting remarks there. Wide-eyed, just wide and starey, which sounds remarkably like being in a trance. More comments from witnesses similar to this later in the film. I telephoned Richard Webster, but he told me that he doesn't really talk about it anymore and tries to keep out of it. I asked if he got a view of the gunman's face, to which he replied, no, I didn't. I then asked him if he saw the gunman's car, and again he said he didn't. Another Duke Street witness, David Simpson, also refused to speak to me about what he saw. Sidney Coyles witnessed both the Duke Street shootings and said, it was strange, as Bird never said a word. There was no shouting. He just kept the gun locked in his shoulder and appeared calm, raising the telescopic sight to his eye. Again, could this suggest some kind of mind control or hypnosis? There are a number of Duke Street witnesses that I have not been able to make contact with. But let's now come on to the incredible account of witness Paul Goodwin, who was described as a hero in mainstream media. He was featured in Panorama's documentary about the shootings and also agreed to take part in an interview for this film. But before we see that, I'll explain with the aid of a map of Whitehaven exactly what Goodwin is alleged to have seen and done. Goodwin was parked on Duke Street, not far from the gunman's vehicle immediately before the shootings started. After the first two shootings took place and the gunman sped off, Goodwin followed him all the way around the one-way system. He followed him down Duke Street on the second pass of the taxi rank, passing the dead body of Darren Rowcastle and all the commotion going on at the rank. He witnessed the gunman shoot again. After the gunman sped off, he then continued following the gunman. He then picked up a police officer in his car here and then drove around the corner and then witnessed the shooting of Paul Wilson. When the gunman sped off yet again, he continued following for another half a mile to Coach Road, where the gunman shoots two more victims. He then follows the gunman's path out of Whitehaven, but chooses to take a different route when he reaches this junction. So let's hear about this in his own words.
I was travelling up Duke Street, and just as I got past where the taxi rank starts, I heard a bang. At the time, I've never even heard a gun go off before, but at the time I knew straight away that was a gun. As I pulled up towards the junction outside the music shop on the end, I turned round and I could see this car pull up, this taxi pull up beside me, and the guy got out with a big gun, and ran across Duke Street and took where Shaker's wine bar is on the corner, and then ran down the street with aiming his gun at somebody on the street. I pulled off the main road onto the side, and got my phone and phoned the police, and told them that there's somebody running loose with a gun. They were obviously asking the details, where I was at and whereabouts, what was happening. And then Bird got back in his taxi and set off back up the road, and he pulled in front of my car, and he was literally 5 foot away.
Right.
But he was just looking straight ahead. But I could see the guns on the seat.
Right. And can you describe him in your own words? What the description?
He just looked very calm. I mean, I only saw the side profile of his face, so. Right. But he just looked very calm. He didn't seem agitated or flustered or anything.
If I ask you what age you thought he looked like?
Well, I would have thought at the time, I thought late 40s, early 50s.
Right. Did you know Derrick Bird at all?
No, I didn't know him until we were watching it on telly and they named him.
Because what I'm trying to do is to get out of your head anything that you've seen on TV thus far, okay, or anything. Just your own your
Mm-hmm.
own recollection
Yeah.
of what the gunman looked like.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see the colour of the hair?
Yeah, it's like a sandy colour hair, yeah.
Right. Okay. You would say it would fit the descriptions of what you then.
But I was saying later on, yeah.
What you then saw later.
Yeah.
On. Okay.
So I started following him. I was still on the phone to the police, relaying the type of car it was, the index number, and just informed them where he was going. So I followed him down Queen Street and onto Lowther Street, and then back up Strand Street, and he came onto Duke Street a second time.
When he went round the first time, okay, did you have sight of the vehicle all the way around until he came back?
Yep, I was right behind him.
Right, all the way around, and then.
In fact, the only time I was about 3 cars behind. When he pulled off Queen Street onto Lowther Street, which is the other main street that runs parallel with Duke Street, I was like 3 cars behind. But by the time we got round to the traffic lights, to come back onto Duke Street, I was right behind him again.
Right. There's no way that vehicles could have been switched there, and then there's maybe a different vehicle the second time round. No way. You didn't.
I also had eyesight of, even though I was 2 or 3 cars behind,
right.
I could still see where he was at.
Right.
And as he was going up Duke Street again, there was obviously loads of people come out the shops and whatever, and offices, and there was people standing on the curbsides. And as you got to where he'd fired the first shot, I could see the young lad lying on the floor that had been shot. As he was coming past the second time, he slowed down again as he was going past the rank, and was firing the gun out the window as he was driving past again. And then he set off to go up Duke Street, so I followed him up Duke Street. And then when we got to the top of Duke Street, there's a pub called The Ship, and the road bears round to the right hand side towards where the police station is. There was lots of police running down towards the town centre at that point, and I spotted the local Bobby, Mike Taylor. So I pulled over to the side of the road, and I said to Mick to get in the car, it's that guy in the taxi, he's got a shotgun, he's just shooting at people. I said, he shot the taxi driver.
Let's move on to location 4, Scotch Street, Whitehaven, 10:34 a.m. 0 dead, 1 injured, 3 witnesses.
And there's a guy walking around the corner, and he sort of put his head down to Bird's car, and then his head went back, and Bird took off. So as we pulled up to the corner, I could see the guy was a guy called Paul Wilson. He used to be my taxi driver every Friday night, and I could see blood on the side of his face. At that point, there was policemen coming out the police station to attend to him. We went in pursuit of Bird.
Well, I've come around the corner. We're on Scotch Street now. Police station's up in front of us up the top of the road there. Basically, my own business. Got my documents to do. I got to be about here and heard my name being shouted. I've looked over and there's Bird in his car, so I've basically just walked over. I've ducked down to look in the car and bang, shot me straight away. Didn't know it at the time, but gust of air across my face, and I've been shot, and most of the pellets have ended in the wall behind me.
And a gentleman comes up to me, he says, "Are you all right, mate?" He grabs me by the shoulders. And he says, yeah, I'm fine, it's just a mate of mine shooting planks. Just been in Dartford, I'm all right, don't worry about me. He says, no, mate, he's bloody shot, yeah.
I managed to speak to one of the Scotch Street witnesses, Robert McLaughlin, seen here in the CCTV clip running to help Paul Wilson.
I was walking down into town, crossing Scotch Street. And as I was crossing Scotch Street, when usually there was no traffic in the street, it was clear. And I noticed the car turning out of Duke Street into Scotch Street, and I thought I had plenty of time to get across. I walked across the road, turned left to go down to Lowther Street, and next thing was I saw a car, Citroen, I think it was a silver-coloured Citroen, pulling sort of 45 degrees to the corner. And the thing I noticed about it was the broken glass. I think there was a windscreen of the quarter light, and a chap was bending down as though he was giving instructions, and there was a big terrific bang, and the chap staggered backwards, holding his neck, and the car proceeded off to the left. I turned round, went back and assisted the chap, and I noticed all his neck was pop-barked and bleeding. And then the police arrived on the scene and moved us all out of, told us to move on, go somewhere secure. There was a...
Just to clear this up, how many people were in the vehicle?
It just appeared to be the driver.
And you got a very slight glimpse of him. Just what was your impression?
He's just the back of his head. He looked, could he be, he looked a fairly biggish chap, that's all I can say.
Could you say fair or dark?
I couldn't really say.
Right.
So Robert did not see the gunman's face, but did see that the quarter panel glass on the passenger side had been broken. Before we move on to the next location, It is worthy of note here that Don Reed was shot at point-blank range in the back with a rifle and Paul Wilson at point-blank range in the face with a shotgun. Their injuries seem a little insubstantial when one considers what happened. Could this be significant?
Don Reed is the guy who got shot in the back. Did you see him at all?
They were treating him in the Brookses. Yes, they were treating him in the back his left hand side back. I think it was all peppered, and the medical people treating him there. Yeah.
Location 5, Coach Road, Whitehaven, 10:35 a.m. 0 dead, 2 injured, 8 witnesses.
About 150 yards down Coach Road, the police car come to a stop, and we heard a bang, and then we saw a taxi. The taxi driver had pulled up at the side of the road. Mick got out the taxi. There was a young lass screaming at the side of the road that they just got out of the taxi.
Witness Belinda McCourt spoke to the News and Star. She said, "I was out walking the dog talking to a neighbour when I heard the gunshot. I thought it was someone shooting pigeons. I saw the man do a 3-point turn on Coach Road outside the school. He had a gun that looked like a rifle pointing out of the window. His windscreen was smashed. He had been shooting out of the window and took off straight away. We heard screaming and realised what had happened." Although Belinda states the windscreen was smashed, she may have been referring to the quarter panel.
I've just spoken to another witness, Belinda McCourt, who witnessed events at Coach Road. Now, she said that she does think the vehicle was a Picasso and it was a silvery colour, and that the man driving it was 45 to 46 and probably was. She does think it was Derrick Bird, as described in news media. She said that the person looked like he had evil in his eyes.
The taxi driver didn't know he had been it till he turned around and looked at me, because all his blood and all his flesh was all over me. And then I just took my seatbelt off and just jumped out the taxi, because as he had shot at us, this policeman was following him in a car, and he jumped out the car, and as soon as they see me taking my seatbelt off, he told me to jump out that taxi and run.
Mick Taylor, the policeman, got out of my car and got the two people that were in the taxi, the driver and the passenger, took them into the churchyard to keep me safe, basically. The police car was stopped in front of me. It seemed like an age, it was probably maybe 30-40 seconds, and then they set off. And I could see at the top far end of Coach Road, which is probably 800-900 metres away, I could see Bird's car going at speed up the hill out of Coach Road. The police went on the low road, I went up the Woodhouse Hill. As I was setting off to go up the Woodhouse Hill, there was a L&G taxi coming down. So I flagged it down, and I said to the lass, "Get on the radio and let the taxi drivers know there's a guy running around with a shotgun and he's shooting taxi drivers. He's already shot 2.
I have come to refer to Paul Goodwin as the roaming witness. He followed the gunman's car for well over a mile and was present at 3 shooting locations during the attacks on 5 victims. He may well be a hero, but to me his actions seem a little odd. If these events were some kind of conspiracy, is it possible that the perpetrators needed a vehicle to track the gunman's vehicle for the duration of the events in Whitehaven, for whatever reason?
Did it cross your mind, "Oh, I'm chasing a guy with a gun, I could be in danger here"?
Nothing even to my mind.
You were just acting on...
I mean, the policeman, Mick Taylor, when we stood at the traffic lights, he said he's reloading his gun, and you could see him reloading the gun again. Right. And it didn't even register. I mean, Mick just kept saying, "Just hang back, don't get too close." He just somewhat like switched on, and you just try and do what you can, like it.
Right.
The next witnesses, Jeffrey and Alison Doran, saw the gunman in his car fleeing the scene after the Coach Road incident. A news report said that he, Jeffrey, saw Bird with a gun sticking out of his grey Citroen Picasso taxi on the Gins to Kells Road. Bird overtook cars despite approaching a blind bend. He said Doran lost sight of the taxi at a T-junction as Bird turned towards St Bees in Egremont.
I've just spoken to Jeffrey Doran, who was with his wife Alison Doran, and they witnessed the Coach Road events. They didn't see him fire his gun, but they saw him. He said he was holding his gun in his right hand out of the window, holding the steering wheel with his left hand. He said that he did get a glimpse of him, and he did think it was the person who he'd seen on TV. And interestingly, he said that he thought that there was decals down the side of the car, indicating that it was a taxi, and he did think it was a taxi. He said it was a silvery grey colour. His wife, apparently, she thought that it wasn't a taxi. So they both, one thought it was a taxi, the other one didn't. So that indicates how people can miss things like that.
Before finally leaving Whitehaven, the gunman pulled over and tried to talk to another member of the public, Jacqueline Williamson, and asked her for the time. She said, "As I walked across checking my watch, I noticed he was holding a gun with both hands, with one on the trigger. He was looking directly at me. His eyes were staring. I will never forget that. I thought at first he was going to shoot the dog, but then I thought he was going to shoot me. I gave him the time, and then I thought, this is it, he is going to shoot me." She said at that moment the dog pulled on the lead away from the car and she walked away in the opposite direction. She said she feared being shot in the back, but eventually Bird drove on. We see here another reference to staring eyes. His eyes were staring. I will never forget that. The next shooting took place 20 minutes later. Location 6, Haggart End Close, Egremont, 10:55 a.m. 1 dead, 0 injured, 8 witnesses. At this location, the gunman got out of his car and shot victim Susan Hughes twice in the stomach with a rifle. The News and Star reported, "The inquest heard from Cleator Moorman David Bell, who was travelling through Egremont en route to Seaskill with his wife and 7-year-old son, when they had an obstructed view of Bird manhandling an injured Mrs. Hughes on the pavement. He said, I saw the taxi with its driver door wide open and we slowed down because it was tight to get round. I saw a man and a woman with his arm around her neck and shoulder. All his weight was on her. Both were standing and she was looking at me with her hand stretched out to me. I thought at the time that she was the taxi driver and that she was helping an elderly passenger into his house and was asking me for assistance. It was as if she was struggling to help him up." Mr. Bell said he looked back, but his view was obstructed by the car. Unaware that there was something seriously wrong, he travelled onto Seascale, where he realised the magnitude of what he had seen. Again, we see no actual description of the gunman, and witnesses not even realising something had happened. I also spoke to Audrey Rogers, who lives right next to the place where it happened.
Okay, I've just knocked on another witness's door, Audrey Rogers, who was listed as being a witness at Haggart End. And she said that she didn't see anything at all. She didn't see any vehicles. She said the police came, but she didn't see anything.
Barry Moss, who was featured in Channel 4's documentary, told the Daily Mirror, "When I got past, I saw a short, fat guy looking up the hill, and I thought that's got to be the taxi driver. I turned round and briefly got a look at his face, and there was no expression. But my eyes were drawn to a massive telescopic sight sniper rifle. It just looked like something out of a James Bond movie. My thought was that it was a prop or something. He stared at me, probably not for very long, but seems longer now. He scurried into the car and drove down the hill. It was only when he had driven off that I saw a body slumped on the pavement." Again we have a comment about the gunman's lack of expression, and again no detailed description, just that he was short and fat. I also spoke to witness Jeanette Henderson, who said she had counselling and did not feel well enough to testify at the inquest, but told me she thought the man she saw matched the images of Derrick Bird shown in the media. Location 7, Bridge End, Egremont, 10:56 a.m. 1 dead, 0 injured, 3 witnesses. I have spoken to 2 of the 3 witnesses. The first, Ruth Hartley, who told the News and Star, "I heard an almighty crack and I knew it couldn't be a car backfiring because they don't do that anymore." Mrs. Hartley told the inquest, "I ran back and saw Ken was bleeding profusely. I checked for signs of life, but I thought he wasn't with us anymore." Ruth told me that she did not see the gunman nor the vehicle, even though she was close to where the gun was fired. I then spoke to soldier Russell Elliott, who was the first person on the scene.
Right, I've just spoken to Russell Elliott, who was a witness at Egremont. Now, he said that he was the first person there to attend to one of the victims, and he said that he didn't see the gunman's face. Now, the other thing that Russell Elliott said was that he didn't think it was a taxi, so no taxi sign on top of the vehicle at Egremont.
Location 8, Vale View, Egremont, 10:57 a.m. 0 dead, 1 injured, 2 witnesses. Leslie Hunter was featured in Channel 4's documentary and survived being shot in the back with a shotgun.
Car pulls up and just says, "Can I see you a minute, mate?" So I said, "Aye, no problem." So I stepped off the curb to go towards him, and as I did, I looked in the car and I seen a shotgun lying across the passenger seat. He started to lift the gun up. Well, I knew something was wrong then. I just turned away as quick as I could, and he fired one shot, which went past my head, and it just a burning sensation. Pellets hit me in the face. They're healed up a bit now, and it was a loud bang, and it deafened me. And as I crouched down further, he fired the other barrel, and right in the middle of my back. He was as calm as anything.
Again, he was as calm as anything. When I met Leslie Hunter, I showed him some photographs of Derrick Bird, and he did think this was the man that shot him. But strangely, Leslie Hunter also insisted the vehicle was definitely not a taxi.
Because I think every taxi has the same decals along the side of the vehicle, so let's go.